Alright, that is the last page of my feature script. After all of that, I say I should celebrate and watch a movie. Aw, dang it. They beat me to the punch. Well, guess it's back to the drawing board for my next feature. I always start by reading this book by the late and great David Lynch. This next feature I write is guaranteed to be a hit, so when it sells, I'll want to direct it. Maybe I should learn how he was able to translate words on a page to emotions on the screen. The Straight Story is seen as David Lynch's black sheep. With its G rating, Disney distribution, and the lack of surrealist imagery, it's no wonder why that is. But if you peel those things back, you will find that this film houses many haunting secrets. On the surface, it's the one Lynch film that's peaceful, serene, happy, it seems. What if I told you that was all a choice, just to contrast the wretched sadness at the core of this film? Reading the script and separating it from the film, taking it in as its own piece of storytelling, you can really see how much David Lynch impacted this story. It could have been presented any number of ways, but he chose to show it like this: a portrait of America and its people, sunny and holy on the outside, with a cold, brooding cave in the soul. Screenplays are written to be concise, easily understandable, yet very descriptive. Oftentimes, the writing can come off as blunt. In the case of The Straight Story, we're going to see how emotional moments were written and then translated by the director. David Lynch is most known for his style. He tends to focus on the darker aspects of life. His films are uncomfortable for some due to that, since he shows us the absolute worst parts of humanity. But oftentimes this dark is balanced with a light. For instance, Dale Cooper. In Twin Peaks, he's happy about coffee while investigating the brutal murder of a teenager. If you look hard enough into any of his work, that light is there. It may be harder to find in some, but trust me, it's there. So if his films tend to be bleak with a glimmer of gold at the center, then The Straight Story is the opposite of that. The core of all of Lynch's work is emotion. His stories can be hard to follow, disturbingly absurd, hard to watch, seemingly impossible to understand, because his goal was never to tell a typical story, rather it was to show emotions. That is the through line in his work. He captures emotions and bestows them to you. In an interview, he says he fell in love with the script, which was written by Mary Sweeney, his girlfriend at the time, and her friend John Roach. That love turned into a deep desire to make the film as an expression of emotions, as per his usual work. The screenplay is not particularly descriptive of the emotions throughout. The weight of the story is not felt until put to film, and it's the director that's responsible for that. Let's look at some examples of how David Lynch brought out pure emotion from simple descriptions. The Straight Story is centered around Alvin Straight, an old man with one foot in the grave, traveling across the Midwest on a lawnmower to visit his estranged older brother before either of them die. This is based on a true story, but as far as I can find, the only things taken directly from reality are pretty much everything I just said. A man named Alvin Straight riding a lawnmower to see his brother. Everything else, the relationships, the people he meets along the way, his background, that was all seemingly made up for the movie. The first third of this film is centered around Alvin before hitting the road. We meet the people in his life, the nosy, usually rude locals, and his sweet daughter Rose, who has some sort of speech impediment and seems mentally handicapped in some way. I wouldn't say Alvin is friends with the other old men in this town, they just all happen to live close to one another. There's a few scenes cut from the script where they all talk about him behind his back, typical small-town gossip circle style. That sense of community and helping thy neighbor attitude is lacking in this idyllic American small town. Rose and Alvin's relationship is all cherry, though. They have a clear love for one another, and you never doubt one's worry for the other. Alvin is a self-proclaimed proud, stubborn man. The first time we see him, he's lying on the ground after a fall. He never screamed for help, or by the look of it, even tried to get up. The scene is comical due to both men playing it completely straight, So the film begins with Alvin accepting his fate. He laid on the ground for hours, just waiting. No scream, no begging for a helping hand, just accepting. That's the type of man Alvin is. His pride drives from his past. Throughout the film, we learn more and more about everything he's been through. His wife passed away over 10 years ago. They had 14 kids, but only 7 made it, as Alvin puts it. He spent most of his life moving from one place to another. He fought in World War II, fell into alcoholism when he returned, had an argument with his older brother, leaving them estranged for almost 10 years. And in the script, we learn that he's not even in contact with all of his surviving children. He's had a long life with ups and downs that we all experience, except there's one down, one valley that separates Alvin from almost everybody alive right now. He was a World War II veteran. That, I believe, is the main source of his pride. We don't learn this until over an hour into the film, but in the script, it's brought up much sooner. It completely recontextualizes the way you see Alvin, so the timing in which that information is presented is essential in your understanding of the character. There's a scene missing in the film where Alvin goes to buy a new lawnmower after his barely made it out of town. He's approached by a young salesman who flounders his words. Alvin has a line here alluding to his time in the service. This would have been about half an hour into the film, the tail end of Act 1. So when he finally hits the road on his 1966 John Deere, we wouldn't be seeing a withering, no-nonsense old man. Rather, we'd be seeing a World War II vet, giving his behavior a reason. Before we get to the trip, there's a few moments I want to point out. This completely awkward exchange between Alvin and Pete, when Alvin asks to buy one of his 2 grabbers. The script simply says, puzzled, but this performance is much more than that. This moment is hilarious because of how unwilling he is to sell such a silly thing, but the script seems to play it off straight, with Alvin's reply meant as considering not too happy. The film keeps the comedic tone, however, with Alvin replying so fast that he was likely going to say okay to any price.
They're hard to come by, Alvin. It's going to take me 2 months to get another one on order. She's Alvin, $10. Ring her up.
The last moment I want to talk about in Act 1 is the scene where Alvin and Rose sit and watch a lightning storm. The script has the TV on in the room, but on film we just get the sound of rain and thunder from outside. The phone rings and Rose lets it ring a few times before getting up and answering it. We hear her speak in the other room. Alvin has an emotional change after hearing his brother Lyle's name. The script says this: Alvin's expression changes to a frown. A few simple words translated to this breathtaking performance from Richard Farnsworth. It's moments like this where you can really appreciate a director, knowing the words they saw and seeing how they evoked the feeling of those words, the abstract emotions hidden in the ink, and communicated those feelings with the actor for it to look just right on film. This shows us just how great David Lynch really was. A director doesn't tell the actors how the emotion was described in the script for any given moment to achieve the feeling the moment is begging for. They have to find the moment themselves and transform it into a communicable string to pass on to an actor, who then translates it again with their own feelings and consciousness before printing the whole mess onto film. It's a fine line. You don't want overacting or flat, underperforming actors, realism versus theatrical acting. You want something magical, an elevated reality, levitating just before it becomes hyperbolic. There's a handful of scenes that were cut, likely for pacing reasons, since the first act is already a little on the longer side. During Alvin's first attempt on the road, his hat is blown off by a passing semi-truck. Before his next departure, there was a scene of him putting the metal coins we see on his hat later. Another cut scene after he broke down includes him talking to one of the attendees on the bus tour, one of the only men that joined the group by the name of Wendell. There's a chance this scene was filmed, as there is this guy seen only in this shot when Alvin enters the bus. IMDb credits a man as playing Wendell and Andy, who's the salesman from the other cut scene. Due to this, albeit shaky evidence, I do think the entire script was filmed as is, and scenes were cut due to the film already being a little under 2 hours and being a slow burn by nature. Doing some research, I can't seem to find any information on if that is true, if these scenes do exist, and if so, where they are. This is a Disney film after all, so if anything, they're just another victim to the fabled Disney Vault, or they are completely lost. If that is the case, then there is an extended version of this film that we will likely never see. The scene with Wendell has the men sitting on a bench together and talking about their wives who have both died. Everyone that Alvin has a heart-to-heart moment with in this film is due to a relation to his life and past experience. There's a scene that emphasizes his view of family, his view of brotherhood, his view of war, his view on growing old. And this scene would have shown us his view on living with women and having a wife. A shame it was cut. Let's get back to the underbelly of the film. Rose is another tragic character here. We learn that she had kids before being stripped of them after an accident. Somebody was watching over her kids when a fire broke out and one of them got burned real bad. Since Rose on the surface appears mentally handicapped, the state took the kids away. Before Alvin's trip, there's this moment of her looking out the window and seeing a boy pick up a ball as her eyes fill with tears. At this moment, we don't know why, but when we do in the scene when Alvin tells Crystal, a hitchhiker, the story, it cuts back to this moment. But now, the kid is gone. It reminds you of that moment, without simply flashing back and showing the exact same footage. People in town treat Rose like a child due to the way she speaks, but Alvin says she has a perfectly capable mind. And we see that that's correct. She helps take care of Alvin, she tries to talk him out of his journey, meaning she has the ability to think reasonably and rationally. Her surface-level presenting form is treated as her whole self by everyone that interacts with her. She doesn't seem to notice, so she may be lacking social abilities. Regardless, her story is tragic and encompasses the nature of the film, a bright presence with a depressing reality. Alvin's journey is made up of mostly quiet moments, shots of him traveling on Midwest highways with the music carrying us along. At one point he pulls over when a group of cyclists pass him. He gets off his mower and tries to follow the passing speedsters, but his eyes aren't fast enough. The world is literally moving too fast for him to keep up. The journey itself represents the elderly, a man who has seen and been through hell, doing whatever it takes to accomplish a simple task. His life is hard, and people can't seem to understand his pride, not seeing a man struggling to live, ready to die, but wanting to hold on just a little longer. Instead, they see a strange old man, too full of himself to ask for help. But when you've been through so much, it comes to a point where everything by comparison is easy. Alvin ends up traveling through the cyclist's campground, where he stops and hangs around with them for the night. They ask him questions about old age, which he answers bluntly and sincerely. There was more to this scene that was left on the cutting room floor, however. The scene begins with this wide shot, where two ladies walk right past the fire. In the script, Alvin is in the middle of saying something else when this happens. It then says this: two young, spandex-clad women walk by. Alvin follows them with his eyes. To me, this implies he may have been checking them out. Omitting it retains Alvin's image as a stern, but generally kind and innocent man. The script continues. When do you know you're getting old? Alvin stirs the fire. The first time I felt old was when I saw a buddy die in the war. I got old that minute. This interaction is not in the film, which is fascinating. It's a powerful line, maybe too powerful for a Disney film. What follows is a moment of silence between the characters. The film has this as well, but it's after Alvin says young people shouldn't think about getting old. This changes the focus from sympathy towards Alvin to an overall reflection of youth. Steve is no longer silent because Alvin just said this traumatic thing, rather he's pondering his own age and time on this planet, and so is the audience. The film doesn't want Alvin's entire identity to be the fact he's a World War II vet. Rather, it wants to make that clear while also emphasizing the fact that he has lived outside of that time in his life, saying to us that your trauma doesn't define you. Alvin goes on to give the life advice you'd expect from a man like Alvin.
I know to separate the wheat from the chaff and let the small stuff fall away.
It's advice you've likely heard but probably don't follow for one reason or another. I think some of the most oversaid and cliche advice is actually the most important and true There's a lot of old people out there that would say similar things, boiling down to don't sweat the small stuff. So why don't we actually listen and utilize that advice? Don't sweat the small stuff. The scene ends with Alvin answering a question with the most brutal, haunting answer.
So, what's the worst part about being old, Alvin?
Well, the worst part of being old is remembering when you was young.
The whole area freezes. He said the thing most may be too scared to say out loud. He admitted that aging is not fun. To have your body fall apart and your mind slip into depths unknown. Meanwhile, the world keeps moving faster and faster around you. It sounds like hell. It reminds me of when you're sick and you think about the day before when you weren't sick, and you think about how you just did nothing but muck around and you really wish you had done something worth your time. It's probably a lot like that, but exponentially worse. Alvin's journey leads him to another small town where some locals take him in after the mower breaks down. Another old gent asks Alvin to join him at the bar. He obliges. The men start reminiscing about their time in the war. Verlin starts by sharing his account of being ambushed at supper time and watching his friends burn alive right in front of him. Alvin mentions the faces he sees, and the script has direction that leads to the notion of PTSD. They both talk about alcoholism being common when soldiers return home, making the whole scene a depressing spectacle of veterans. These two men open up to each other because they feel that they only really can to their fellow veterans. The things they've seen and been through are things regular civilians can never quite comprehend. Alvin tells his horror story. A time he accidentally shot their scout, killing him. Everyone in his troop assumed it was a German sniper, but Alvin knows that isn't true. He makes a point to mention how small the man was twice, likely a defense towards the accidental nature of the killing. Verlin's reaction is one of somber understanding. War is hell. Aging can be hell. Take two people who've gone through both. They are bound to find some peace with one another. This is the only person Alvin is emotional around besides his brother at the end of the film. Everyone else, even when he's talking about sad things, never sees him cry. He finally talked to someone on a similar level than him, a man who can understand the horror of his life. The darkness of this film is there throughout because Alvin is with us throughout. We are following a sad man on this silly journey, except it's not silly to him. He takes it very seriously. His sadness originates from life happening to him, but he still knows that he has a say in what he does back to life. He's a kind man at the end of the day, a loving man who cherishes his family above all at the tail end of his life. The importance of family is glaringly apparent in the film. His advice to the pregnant teenage girl he meets along the way is to keep your family close because together you are strong. His family has been through a lot, but he remains caring for Rose and Rose remains caring for him, both refusing to let their hardships completely tear them down and away from each other. The entire mission of the film, for Alvin to see his brother again, is another example of that. He's letting go of whatever argument they had that drifted them apart, because whatever, don't sweat the small stuff. Family is something you have to make an effort to be a part of. You decide, but the option is always there. Those are life-altering decisions, being a part of a family or not, but what about the everyday decisions we make? The film extends the notion of caring for your family outwards into the world beyond, exiting the constructed circle and infesting everyone. The decision to be kind is, to many, not always their first thought. We see people be kind to Alvin along his journey, open to talking with him, helping him, supporting him on his quest in whatever way they can. They do it knowing nothing about him, but blindly trusting him, believing he's a person worth helping, an idea that I fear our world has started to lose. People are so paranoid and overly individualistic that nobody seems to want to help their neighbor. But it's those moments of support for someone else, no matter how well you know them, that makes us human, that gives us meaning beyond ourselves, a true extension of our lives, branching off into webs and roots that we will never see. Alvin's life affects everyone he comes across on this journey, from Crystal to Verlin, to the lady screaming about the deer she keeps hitting. These moments are sparks that light the fuse to a new future. It's absurd sometimes, but that's only natural in a deeply absurd world. Alvin gets to eat the deer and the lady gets to rant. 2 lives never to meet again, yet touched all the same. Opening shots are important, and I skipped over it initially. We see stars as the opening credits roll. It's the first scene in the script. This is meant to be the first image the audience takes in. We learn that Alvin and his brother used to look up at the stars and came up with stories of faraway people and places to make themselves seem small. So maybe Alvin always had the belief of not sweating the small stuff. Perhaps that was the gift from the stars. The final moments of the film have Lyle and Alvin finally reuniting. It's short, quiet, with only a few words being exchanged, but just enough to know that everything is all right. Then they're silent, and we tilt up before fading into stars, bookending the film with this cosmic force of nature to feel like we've traveled to another world and left once we saw all we had to see. The only thing that sets the Straight Story apart from Lynch's other work is the visual style. It's a completely other world, something very different from what we usually get from him, but still has a sense of familiarity. I would highly recommend you read the screenplay for your favorite films. You get a completely new sense of appreciation for the director and get to see scenes, moments, lines that were completely cut. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked that video, you should check out my other script analysis I did on the film Brokeback Mountain. Also, if you want to see a monkey read you poetry, check out that channel. And if you think I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to films, you can watch my very own films on my other channel.